It is now. You're on air, ain't on. Are we on, live on air?
It doesn't say live on air on the little fancy thing.
Okay, all right, that's all I was wondering. Roll call, please.
Councilmember White,
Here.
Ryan,
Here.
Davidson,
Here.
Lawson,
Here.
Richardson,
Here.
McCallum,
Here.
Johnson. Here. Mayor Larkey.
Here,
And Wyatt.
we have a quorum. No personal appearances, unfinished business. One, motion approving the final reading of Bill 2025-30.
Present.
Too early.
Oh, sorry.
An ordinance approving the vacation of Autumn Ridge Office Park final plat located at the southwest corner of South Mullen Road and Silver Maple Drive in the city of Belton, Cass County, Missouri.
Present.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Councilmembers White,
Here. Yes. And I'm off today.
Richardson,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Johnson. Aye. Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
McCallum,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Davidson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Item two, motion approved, final reading of Bill 2025-31.
An ordinance approving a final plat for Creekstone at Autumn Ridge, a 5-lot and 1-tract residential plan on 9.81 plus or minus acres located west of South Mullen Road and south of the Smoky Hill Railroad tracks in the city of Belton, Cass County, Missouri.
Present.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Councilmembers Lawson,
Aye.
Johnson. Aye. Richardson,
Aye.
Pryan,
Aye.
Davidson,
Yes.
Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
McCallum,
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item three, motion approving the final reading of Bill 2025-32.
An ordinance approving a development and maintenance agreement between the city of Belton and Autumn Ridge Homes LLC for public and private infrastructure for Creekstone at Autumn Ridge, lots 1 through 3 and Track A.
Present.
Second.
Motion and a discussion, or motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Councilmembers Pryan,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
Lawson,
Aye.
McCallum,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Johnson. Aye. Davidson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Item four, motion approving the final reading of Bill 2025-33.
An ordinance authorizing the approval of a software access agreement between the Belton Fire Department, the Cass County Emergency Services Board, ESB, and Central Square Technologies, LLC.
Present.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
Councilmembers McCallum,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Pryan,
Aye.
Davidson,
Yes.
Richardson,
Aye.
Johnson. Aye. Lawson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Consent agenda, one motion non-debatable to approve the recommendation noted. Any member of the council may ask for an item to be taken from the consent agenda for discussion and separate action.
Present.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
Could we take number 4 off? I just have some questions.
Anybody else? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item four, motion approving resolution 2025-54.
A resolution approving the purchase of 12 Sig Sauer M400 rifles from Sentinel Supply for the Belton Police Department.
Present.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Hey, Chief Lyons, I just had some general questions.
Yes.
So this is replacing rifles that have been in service since 2005.
Yes.
And the quote was $13,000 with a trade-in value of just under $12,000.
Yes.
Okay. It also says that they will destroy items per BATF requirements. Can you tell me just a little bit what that means?
Bureau Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms regulates firearms across the board. In particular, some of the weapons that we're trading in were automatic weapons that our SWAT team had, and those are no longer practical. The weapons are breaking down just like our patrol rifles, And in particular, having an automatic weapon as a SWAT weapon is not practical these days. It's not best practice. We have to account for every time a trigger is pulled where a bullet ends up. And so we're switching the SWAT team to semi-automatic weapons. And so when we're trading these in, it has to be done with a Class 4 dealer. And this entity that we're trading these weapons to, they're going to be taking those lower receivers and destroying them. And they can only be done by the certified BATF regulated organization. And so that's why we chose this vendor in particular, because everything's under house. The purchase of the weapons, the trade-in value, plus they can dispose of these weapons per BATF regulations.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. That's all I had.
Go ahead.
I remember, I believe we had discussion about this previously. Was this planned for within the budget?
It was planned in the budget. We had come previously to city council. The vendor that we originally came to city council with only fulfilled half of the order, which was semi-automatic rifles you could buy right off the shelf. They could not complete the rest of this transaction, so we had to go back out and rebid it. They lost the Sig Sauer distributorship for the Midwest, and so this is the new distributor, and they can also handle this issue with the BTF regulations.
Perfect, thank you.
Anybody else? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Communication from city council.
Went to Carrie Nation Days, and it was very successful. I think it seemed like everybody was having a great time, and the weather was great, so congratulations on that.
Okay, I have a few things. So I watched live as the Parks Master Plan came together. There was a motion, or a mention rather, there was a mention that they should be reviewing that master plan every so often, quarterly or so, for updates on the plan. And as I heard that, I was reminded that a similar mention was made when we adopted the comprehensive plan. And I know we've talked, and don't get me wrong, I understand that we've talked fairly frequently about the comprehensive plan, so I'm not trying to suggest that we've somehow forgotten about it. But I guess I would potentially like to ask that we have something brought forward every quarter or every 6 months or something that just kind of gives us an update as to where we are with the things that we were, striving for on the comprehensive plan, if that's something we could do.
Yeah, I think the goal of the comprehensive plan, I think it was written somewhere in the plan, was that we would provide annual updates.
Oh, okay.
And that would include revisiting the future land use map annually, making any modifications based on previous rezonings that were approved throughout the year that may necessitate a change in the future land use map or the plan. And those would all be done via a public hearing at Planning Commission, but we would also share that plan and present that plan to City Council.
Perfect. And again, I know we've talked a lot about, just about any time we're doing things with zoning or planning, we're talking about comprehensive plan and how it fits in, but I, just thinking from like an overview, I thought that was a good idea that, was talked about at Parks and obviously talked about with our comprehensive plan, so.
Yeah, and since that plan was adopted in November, we would likely be bringing something in either December or January.
Okay. And then I just want to point out that during the last Planning Commission meeting, there was a fairly lengthy but good a general overview of the development process and opportunities within the city, how that works and whatnot. So I'd encourage anybody to go watch that video as Patrick and Matt provided us with some good insights there. And then, of course, Carrie Nation Days took place. I was able to attend as well, and obviously fantastic community festival. I heard from Brian that it brought in potentially over 6,000 people throughout the weekend based on Pacer AI data, which is awesome. And I do want to take a moment to brag on my daughter, who participated in the 0 to 35 pound weight class for the tractor pedal pull. She did take first place, And so I have her trophy here presented. It's a very, very nice trophy. And it was actually, like, if you haven't seen that event before, I would encourage you to check that out, because it is a lot of fun watching these kids try to pull, on this little pedaled tractor, trying to pull weight and whatnot. It's a fun event. I have a really hard time trying to quantify this, because the event, Carrie Nation Days wasn't noticeably significantly different from last year, but for some reason, and I've had a hard time quantifying how, it just felt like it was a better and bigger event this year. And I just got to say, like, it was one of the best festivals that I think we've had here in Belton, and it seemed to go off really well. And I hope and I love seeing that. And as I've talked about festivals so many times here, I really hope that other, companies or groups or whoever from the outside may see that and realize opportunity here in Belton for festivals and events, because that was on full display that weekend, and hopefully maybe that'll lead to some more opportunities where we can do those things, more than the times in which we do. So that's everything I have.
I was wondering about that trophy. I thought that was yours when you was a kid. Show and tell, yeah.
Last month.
No, it is show and tell, but it's for my daughter.
Go ahead.
I was also going to shout out Carrie Nation Days. It was a good success. I was popping in and out all weekend. And I want to congratulate our new Miss Belton, Angel Day. Some of you might recognize her because she's also participated in the first stages of the Belton Youth Commission. So hopefully we'll see her here in the council chambers some more, or we'll get to meet with her one-on-one as she does both of those things. So that's all I have.
I also attended Carrie Nation Days. The drone show was awesome. So thumbs up on that, and thumbs up to Officer Pruitt for the golf tournament. I'm an old dog, so I still call it the DARE tournament. I know it's something new now, and I will work better to understand what that is. But lots of fun had by all, and and I just stole the mayor's thunder. So that's all.
Councilmember Davidson, please.
Again, shout out to the parks. It was a great event, Carrie Nation. And also, the potholes got fixed on Main Street, so some of the business owners were very excited about that. So thank you.
Again, I also was at the Carrie Nation Days, and I thought it was an exceptional event, especially Legends of Liverpool. So they can come back anytime they want, as far as I'm concerned. And I want to thank the parks for their leadership in that. So I think I'll pass from there.
All right. Of course, I will say everything everybody's saying about Carrie Nation Days. Excellent, great turnout. And also, I was going to talk about the DARE tournament. I'll still call it the DARE tournament too. So, great tournament, even though somebody else won and I didn't. So, go ahead.
I forgot. I heard quite a bit of talk that weekend about the hometown feel and small feel, and that's where we get it from, is those festivals. And so I encourage everyone, when we have those, to come down and experience it, because that's how we keep it. It's not going to be down 58 Highway. Anyway, that's with it. I'm done.
City Manager.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I only have one thing. We have on June 19th is Juneteenth, and so City Hall will be closed that day. Just letting you and the public know that. That's all I've got.
Man, I have a go back too. I apologize. I got so excited about Carrie Nation Days and that trophy up here, I forgot to give a park update. The farmer's market still going on every Thursday. Shouldn't be a surprise, just a reminder. Summer camp is ongoing through the weekdays, will be through August 8th. June 13th, which is Friday, we'll have theater in the park. As a reminder, June 14th will be the Kids Run at Wallace Park. What I hear is there's over 100 people signed up already, and there's still some spots left. So Might be a fun event just to go watch some kids run through some mud. And then there's been a Food Truck Friday planned on June 20th in Memorial Park. So I anticipate a lot of yummy options on June 20th. So, sorry, I forgot that update.
No worries. All right, item K, items for review and discussion. One, KC Compost Facility Expansion.
Yeah, I passed out a location map of this at your seats. Staff has received a request for an expansion of the KC compost facility, which is at 2008 East 171st Street, which is located on the north side of 58 Highway, just over the railroad overpass, past Prospect. They would like to add an additional 20 acres to their special use permit, which was first approved in 2005, which would bring their total site to 57 acres. Under the recent land use code updates that were approved back in April, the compost facility must be rezoned to BP Business Park and obtain a special use permit approval for the compost facility expansion. They've also submitted a final plat to consolidate that into single lot. The compost facility, they said that the compost facility will actually remain on the existing acreage, so this additional expansion will accommodate an additional hoop house and additional storage areas for the material, kind of the final end product. But most of the composting will still take place up at the front where it's currently being housed. The Planning Commission will hold a public hearing for this rezoning and special use permit request next Tuesday, June 17th. And then for their recommendation to the City Council on July 8th.
Any question? Go ahead.
What's the small black box in the expansion area? I can't read the.
That is the hoop house. So that's just a covered structure. They have a few of those up front, currently closer to 58. Just additional storage areas that keep it out of the elements.
If they decided to flip their design and put all their composting and everything at the other end of the property, is there anything that would stop them from doing that? If that's what, I know, other than obviously it probably doesn't make sense from a money perspective and all that, but let's just pretend they decided to do that. Is there any reason that they couldn't?
Other than they have all of the facilities and if they've invested a significant amount of infrastructure and building improvements up there to accommodate that. Plus it would probably necessitate the drop-off going further, because right now you just drop off there in the front, so it's a lot easier to drop off there rather than take customers all the way to the back and around. So accessibility, having that up front makes more sense for their process. But the whole site would be subject to the composting facility requirements.
Okay. Just, I know currently, I believe, if I remember this area, there's nothing on the other side of that of significant structure-wise or anything. I think it's just farmland. Is that correct?
Farmland and then all the oil wells that are back there.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right. Item 2, UDC text amendment, residential driveways.
Yeah, staff has drafted updates to UDC section 26-5 for residential driveways based on multiple items that have been brought forward by residents, builders, and the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee over the last couple of years. These amendments are intended to accommodate several items, including expanding the driveway coverage in the front yard from 35% to 50%, which would better accommodate off-street parking for accessory and recreational vehicles. The 35% maximum coverage generally limits parking pads on the side of a two-car garage on most standard lots. And that's where we're typically getting requests as somebody to add a third car wing on the side of their house, and they're unable to do that. In addition to that, allowing ribbon driveways in the side and rear yards for parking pads on the side of the house and to access garages in the rear yards. Ribbon driveways essentially require that the wheel path be paved with concrete or pavers, and then they're allowed to grow grass in between. And then we would also propose to restore the exception for gravel driveways in agricultural zoning districts for driveways that are longer than 200 feet, with the condition that the front 50 feet of the driveway closest to the street be paved to minimize gravel being tracked into the street. And then another item is to allow exceptions for a second driveway on street frontages for lots that are over 125 feet wide, which would accommodate horseshoe or circle drives. These amendments were reviewed and recommended unanimously by the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee, and the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing next Tuesday, June 17th, and these items will be brought forward to council on July 8th.
Any questions? Go ahead.
And I just want to, I believe I heard you say this, but just to make sure, a lot of this is because these are requests that we are already getting from residents on this topic as it is.
Yeah, we're constantly having to work with residents and builders on finding other creative solutions to try to meet their parking requirements. But that still technically, just generally doesn't always get a resident or a builder to where they need to be to accommodate the additional off-street parking. A lot of the concerns were also, have been brought up consistently over the last couple of years by the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee, especially in some of the older neighborhoods where there's a lot of on-street parking and people they don't have a lot of options to add on to their driveway based on these coverage restrictions to be able to get those cars off the street. The ribbon driveways were also a way of finding a more affordable solution since paving an entire driveway, especially all the way to the backyard on the side of the house, can be an expense. Initially, they wanted to have the ribbon driveways in the front yard. We had some concerns about the aesthetics of that and the long-term maintenance of the grass in the front yard that may eventually die, or so we wanted to make sure that that wasn't as visible to the street. So those are some of the changes that were made to accommodate the comments that were provided by the committee.
I can recall at least one discussion I had with the resident about the portion of you said the driveway can remain gravel up until where it comes into the right of way, that, or whatever that language is you just said. What is the requirement for that portion of the driveway?
So if you're talking about existing gravel in single-family neighborhoods, they're allowed to maintain their gravel, but they have to if they are making any improvements in the right-of-way, that does have to be concrete. I know there's been some.
As opposed to
asphalt.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know that concern has come up before, but anything within the right-of-way has to be concrete and not asphalt. And then the exception, and so nothing in the code is changing in regards to that. The change on gravel is related to agricultural zoning districts, which previously allowed gravel up until 2021. And then when the change with the asphalt and the right-of-way was changed, that whole gravel piece was removed. But looking at the amendments at that time and the documents from engineering, don't believe that that was the intent. I think the intent was just to clarify no gravel in the right-of-way. It had to be paved. So we're restoring that based on, we have numerous large lots that have driveways that are 500 plus feet long. Obviously, paving that is a huge expense, so we're trying to accommodate that, but still limiting the gravel that's getting kicked out into the street by requiring the front 50 feet to be paved.
Okay.
Anybody else? Hearing none. Item 3, police response to the unhoused.
Chief Scott Lyons, Police Department. Tonight, we're going to talk about some of the same issues we talked about last week in regards to the mental health co-responder program. And I'll get started. The police department encounters unhoused persons in our community, typically as a result of calls for service due to being victims or suspects of alleged crimes, panhandling, medical calls, or just check the welfare. Over time, these individuals become known to fire and police as being unhoused due to their history of contact with us. There's several different types of unhoused in our community based on living patterns. And that could be temporary housing where they're sofa surfing. They're going from location house to location to location. Maybe they have a friend or they have some kind of arrangements. Even sometimes they will save up their money if they're getting Social Security or some type of disability, and then spend that for a hotel for like a week or something, or off and on. They could also be living in camps or living in and out of vehicles, and a new one for me is vehicle caravans, which we do have. They may also frequently vary these living patterns, like I said, even in and out of our community, especially the ones that live in and out of vehicles. They travel through many different communities, and a lot of times that's based on services or things they can access in other communities based on a day and a week. When police officers identify an underlying mental illness and or substance abuse, we can engage our mental health co-responder. That's been a great resource for us, who will conduct an assessment, whether it's on scene, in the municipal jail or police lobby, or even go out to the scene for designated follow-up if we come into contact with them again. And so staff estimates the majority of the unhoused encountered by police officers possess some underlying mental health issue or substance abuse issues. Typically, the mental health co-responder will attempt to address the most presenting concern or immediate need, such as food. And so that kind of actually helps them build rapport and determine additional needs just by having a discussion. About 50% of those contacted will actually consent to being assessed for services, with only 1/3 of those that have volunteered to go through that process will actually complete it. And so if an unhoused person volunteers to continue in the assessment process, the mental health co-responder will determine if they've already enrolled previously in services, because maybe they started the process and now they terminated it for whatever reason. They will just reconnect them with treatment or refer them back to a further case management. If they are not already engaged in that process, the mental health co-responder will connect them with a caseworker to begin the application process for Medicare and Medicaid. These types of approvals will determine the types of services that they're available for them, such as mental health treatment, health screening and treatment for whatever health ailments they may have, assistance with medications, Social Security, disability, Section 8 housing vouchers, sober living, drug treatment, more intensive, food stamps, residential housing, assisted living, and other types of services. Barriers to success for the unhoused that Compass and our mental health co-responder have run into a lot is the freedom to disengage at any point from the process, and that happens quite often, like I spoke of before. They can refuse to participate or engage or refuse to engage in treatment with it, which is both very possible. There's lack of consistent methods for keeping in contact with them. Like I explained before, they transition in and out of different types of living conditions, but they also might not have a cell phone, or if they got a cell phone, they have no way of getting it charged or keeping it charged. That'll come back in a minute when we go through the camps. Their mobility, they're constantly transitioning in various forms of their living conditions. Lack of transitional housing to work with caseworkers. This is not shelters. This is not anything like this. This is transitional housing that Compass would have, where they could place them there temporarily while they work through the process of trying to access Medicaid, Medicare, and all those different services. Someplace where Compass would have direct access to them, or so we could cut down on the lack of a consistent method of communicating with them. And that is something that Compass is looking at trying to attack through a grant. And there's some other things that the state is actually working on as well. Lack of timing to access mental health beds and residential treatment or assisted living facilities. This is a big frustration for us in regards to, you get somebody that's cooperating, you get someone that is needs mental health treatment, and by the time you get through the application phase, there might not be beds available. I understand the governor is working on a solution to bringing back what used to be called Western Mental Health down in Kansas City by the Truman hospitals. And I think almost every law enforcement agency and mental health catchment area is looking forward to whether or not that can be accomplished in the next 4 years. Typically, the police department learns of unhoused camps from callers, that's through the 911 or through our dispatch center, who have noticed persons entering or coming from wooded areas, such clumps of trees, drainage areas, fields, etc. A lot of signs that I would encourage citizens to pick up on would be presence of trash. It'll be an overabundance. Staging of supplies, which is now very common, especially camps that they have abandoned. They know that we go back and look for them, but they will actually use some of those places to stash supplies. Visible trails. There's a very good example of one that is on our east side of our city where we're starting to see visible trails come back. That was one we dealt with 2 years ago. Warning signs, they actually will post warning signs, and I'll show you an example of that in a few minutes. And, you know, they're quite innovative. They have makeshift bridges that go over creeks. They have ropes to help them get in and out of these areas in darkness so they don't fall down hills. The police department, I want to stress this. We get calls all the time from business owners in strip malls. These unhoused persons like to hang out around areas where they have access to food, trash cans, ability to panhandle on corners. So it's around retail areas, businesses, restaurants, fast food. And so we cannot just indiscriminately tell people you're off this property and trespass them, cite them, arrest them. We need somebody that actually has the authority to sign that trespass. And so we typically try to cajole them, try to get them to move on in those circumstances. But the problem is that that's not a strong enough motivator for them not to come back at a later date. And so a lot of times these camps are moving from one location to another location and then repeating the cycle. And so often the caller that calls us doesn't wish to prosecute. There's been no criminal offense towards them. And so it puts us, in, like I said, in a difficult position to actually find a final solution because they will just come back whenever we're gone. The police department collaborates mostly with codes enforcement in regards to, in many instances, to determine the proper ownership of some of these properties. And sometimes it's very difficult. It might be owned by a business, but we have no way of determining who the point of contact is for that particular piece of property, and that's why codes is very, very important to us. We also use them because of their knowledge of codes violations, which we come across quite frequently. We also engage fire department, public works, depending on the situation. In several instances, we've also partnered with the Raymore Police Department because the area is on the border between both of our cities. Maybe part of it's on ours and part of it's on theirs. And so unhoused individuals are given an opportunity to vacate the area, vacate the property. Once we get the proper person to give us that warning. However, their refusal to vacate can result in citing them for trespass. We try to avoid those situations at all costs. This is an example of an unhoused camp. I talked about warning signs. This is behind a retail business that includes a clothier shop. And they've taken a mannequin that was thrown away, and they've created a signage with a mask warning people to stay out of the area, whether it is unhoused or people just coming back there because they're curious. They stage supplies. A lot of supplies that we see are pallets, They use those for makeshift bridges. You can see this one even has a little bit of a rope or a handrail, a makeshift handrail, I think, out of either it's a tree that's down or it's a rope, I can't tell. But anyway, these are the things we commonly see. They also use pallets for campfires in the wintertime. If you were to look at this one in particular, it is in a very prominent area of our city, but you cannot see it from the roadway. But if you look very closely, you can pick up on different colors. They will use limbs and tree branches to try and conceal it. And then those foliages die, and then they look for more foliage to actually try to cover it up. This is a little bit closer view. One of the things that I'm going to talk about quite often in regards to these camps is the amount of trash and damage to the environment, whether it be sewage or food spoiling or just the living conditions sometimes are just intolerable for just, in general, what citizens in general are used to. This is a camp that's actually in existence right now. It moved from another location, and they actually have rules for it. It has multiple tents in this particular site, housing different individuals, and these are the rules that they've come up for their camp. Back up. This is a really good example of some of the items that we find in these camps. We'll find open campfire, which at times is problematic. And fire goes in and looks at it when they see smoke in these areas coming up. They get calls on it. But you can also see that they use cardboard a lot to try to provide some kind of flooring instead of being on mud. And then they'll actually make shelters out of cardboard and other items. They get quite inventive. This is the inside of one tent. It's a pretty good sized tent. It would be considered a family tent, maybe 4 to 6 people. But they've actually got a couch that they've dragged back in there, and it's actually got a table. And so that's what I mean by they're quite inventive, and sometimes are using items that see off of curbs that are maybe for large pickup for trash, or it's got the sign that says free on it. This is a camp that's not in our city. It's off 155th Street, and there's multiple areas back in there where there's trash all over the place, burned out cars. On occasion, we've actually, on all these different camps, we utilize our police drone to fly these areas. It's actually good training for our drone operators, but actually lets us understand where the camps are actually at. We can actually fly the drone at night and actually use the LiDAR to actually pick up heat signatures so we can actually do counts in regards to these camps. Because a lot of times when we go there during the daytime, they are out moving about, collecting food and trying to get services. There's a structure on the picture on the right that's actually one that they're living out of. It looked to me like a Connex box, a small Connex box. And so that's basically our response to unhoused persons, if you have any questions.
Go ahead.
What do you recommend citizens doing if they are on their personal property?
Excuse me. If they are on personal property and the person's wishing to call the police. First and foremost, a lot of times they're cutting through personal property to get to an area that's been designated as belonging to the residential drainage area. A lot of times they are seeking that, and so they will cut across personal property to get there. There are business owners, and sometimes there are private individuals that allow them to stay on the property. We know of one business here in town that allows people, they allow unhoused on their property at night because they have an agreement that they will force other unhoused out, and then they leave in the morning. And so a lot of times, the person calling might not know about that relationship, but once we get into it, there's not much we can do in regards to the situation because they have permission to remain on the property.
So they become their security.
They basically become the security for the property.
Chief Lyons, you mentioned something about communication, cell phones, not having access to charge. What were you going to flesh out with that? Because I had an idea.
I thought I had a picture in there, but we actually have a camp that has I'm looking at Brian because he's a boater, a boat gas can that they go up and they get like 7 gallons of gas. They pump it out and they can actually have a generator where they run a generator and then they have electrical cords off of it so they can charge their devices. And so it's a very small generator.
The thought I had with that, thinking about our mental health co-responder, is if like reusable charging bricks could be an incentive for folks to come back and get services. Like, we want to be in touch with you, take this, if you bring it back, we're going to go on to the next step.
Yeah, I could float that idea. We're very cautious about what types of things that we offer to the unhoused. I think 4 years ago, Kansas City had a community group that was handing out machetes. Those machetes were then being used to commit crimes, and there was a lot of assaults, as you can think, in Kansas City, but we had a couple of them off of north of 155th off of North Scott. And so our officers responded along with the county. We would intercede and find the victims. Fire would come up and deal with it with the victims, and then Kansas City would come and they would refuse to handle the situation, and then we would just take the machete, even though it wasn't in our city. And so we had a very well-meaning community resource center that was handing out tents. And I understand that what the intent was, but they were being used to then go out and do camping. And we find them all over our city in Raymore as well. And so I'll float that idea. That sounds like a great idea, even like a battery pack or something. A lot of times when they use our police lobby, they have their own cords. And so they come in and power up their devices, stay along for that, and then they move on. I know that Heart and Hand is also a place where they can do that. And there's several other businesses, as long as they don't cause problems. And understand the library is a big resource for that as well.
Is there any, looking into the parks, because I've noticed a lot, there's been quite a few of them at Memorial that tend to sleep on the benches and the tables, and some of the parents are kind of afraid to let their kids go in there and play, even teenagers, just because of these. But I haven't really seen anything that we do or what we can do with that, so.
We basically work off a complaint, and if they don't notify us, Parks does notify us on a regular basis, especially when they're hanging out in the bathroom facilities. I know that we talked quite often. In fact, we were just talking frequently about people that operate in vehicles. A lot of times they're very respectful. They obey the laws. They don't cause any problems. They try to keep to themselves. But every once in a while you find somebody that won't obey the laws. And so if we get a call on a situation like that, we would ask them to follow the laws or follow the rules of the park. And if they can't, then Parks would ask us to escort them off the park. But you have to be very difficult because that is a public property.
I believe, I just want to confirm, you had mentioned that one of the problems we come across is not knowing who a business owner is and/or a business owner potentially not being a property owner to be able to do trespassing. And I believe that's some of the concerns that we saw over in Ward 1 with some of the unhoused. We were getting complaints and concerns brought forward. And you guys, is that accurate? You guys are coming out talking to them, but it wasn't a whole lot?
You might have a leasee that is for the actual property, like the business that they're running. They want us to do something about the unhoused, using the parking lot, sleeping near the dumpsters, that kind of thing. If we're talking about the same place, location is in and around an area where they can get food or get to dumpsters. They have access to Panhandle. They have a church nearby that is very giving. And the other thing is I think if we're talking about the same place, we're talking about wintertime. They're looking for windbreaks. And so that particular strip mall, the trash cans or bins are too large to get into the enclosures. And so the bins sit outside the enclosure, and our officers would find the unhoused inside the bin with the doors closed because they're looking for a windbreak. And I want to say that there was somebody that had actually started a campfire in there. It's all concrete, which is not necessarily a hazard unless they got burned or anything, but they're using it for that purpose, and it's an opportunity. And so we've discussed that with codes, and there's, it's one of those things like during hot weather, they're not looking to go to that position, to that location, and so they're moving on.
Brian, is it still that the parks close at 11? And so after 10, they're really not supposed to be in the parks, is that correct?
That is correct.
And then I was talking to one of your individuals, and is the bathroom still a major issue with them making sure they could keep it unlocked and all that kind of stuff?
Depends on the time of year, obviously the winter time, but I know that when we do have problems, we visit with, or get with Chief Lyons, and they do nightly sweeps, and if there's any issues, then they run them out. And we've actually provided them a master key so they can get in any one of our facilities but our mag locks, we have mag locks that lock, so hopefully.
Yeah, parks are problematic for several different reasons. For community policing, crime prevention through environmental design, would tell you wanted a lighted area. You want visual surveillance into that area to deter people from staying there overnight. The problem with that is they might find that the light helps them, stay in there, travel about in there, and that might be unwanted traffic to begin with. Locking gates, you're locking out police officers from being able to get in there and check the park, but you're locking out people in vehicles that might try to get in for whatever reasons. And so it's always a push and a shove in regards to what kind of public service message do you want to send about parks? Because if they're locked and you have all kinds of security measures, the impression is it's not a safe place. And so it's always a conversation between us and parks in regards to what do you do in regards to after hours.
One more. So it seems like part of your solution is services and housing.
Yeah, that seems to be the thing that's most effective, is trying to get them the help that they need. When it comes to arrest and getting them into that setting, arrest is not a solution, is a temporary solution, not a long-term solution. And so we would really like to re-engage the county judges in regards to a mental health court locally, and we'd also like to see one on the state level. We would like to have some type of lever where we have people that have a prosecutorial deferment, so they don't get the criminal charge. They can escape the criminal penalty for whatever they've been arrested for, as long as they're engaged in services with the provider, taking their medication, and not reoffending. The whole goal is that we never come into contact with them again. And so I think that would be very highly effective for us. what you will get from the mental health co-responder in Compass is they feel like treatment is the way to go, because then that solves a lot of other problems issues in their lives.
You had, excuse me, you had indicated that Compass was working on gaining more transitional housing. Do you know where they are in that process?
Not more transitional housing, period, because they don't have it. They want somewhere where they can get a person and then they can have repeated contact with them and as close to possible as what that caseworker is, so they can keep them engaged. And so that can take many forms, but they want to be as close to that as possible. And so I know that this is not just a solution for this community, it's a solution for a lot of other communities as well. But they want to use, but this would be a Compass-run thing for their clientele, not for clientele for other communities.
Or potential clientele.
Yes.
Anybody else? Thank you.
I neglected to mention something during council communications. This is a bit of an overlap with my day job, but Congressperson Mark Alford will be in Belton on Monday, this coming Monday, the 16th, at Memorial Station for a town hall style conversation with KCUR, which is where I work. So just a heads up on that. If I'm not mistaken, all of the reserved seats are taken. It was a limited event, but there will be a live stream for folks who want to hear him answer and respond to questions from the community. So just mentioning that so everybody knows.
Anybody else with anything? We have no reason to go into executive session, so I would.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
No need for roll call since we're not going into executive session, just a voice vote.
Yeah, so used to that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned. I'm so used to the other way.